Again, I'm Tom Carrico, Senior Fellow here in the Defense and Security Department and the Director of the Missile Defense Project. We're closing out our day strong with 5 of the Vice Chiefs of Staff. This panel is going to be moderated by Dr. Seth Jones. He's the President of the Defense and Security Department here of CSIS and author of The American Edge from Oxford on the American Defense Industrial Base. He's my boss as well, so I have to mention that. Look, the Secretary of Defense has indicated his intent to have some pretty significant changes. Recent memos on software, Army transformation. Of course, we've seen an executive order on shipbuilding, lots of other things, and that's probably going to mean some big shifts to the program of record. I'll say as well, this is a reprise of the panel from last year, which was quite a hit. So I think we'll just turn it over to you, Seth. You've got your hands full. This will be a good one. Thanks very much.
Thanks, Tom. Just want to thank everybody else for staying till the best panel of the day. So I wanted to start off with kind of a big picture question, starting off with General Mahoney. And one of the interesting things that has come up over the course of the day, several members of Congress spent a chunk of time talking about this, certainly Senator McConnell, among others, is the evolving global landscape that we have. So we've got cooperation in Russia with the Chinese, the North Koreans and the Iranians providing assistance. Interesting developments in the Red Sea where we've got Chinese and Russian assistance to the Iranians and the Houthis. So we're seeing that in multiple theaters. And the question for you from a Marine Corps perspective as you look at this, this cooperation is, what are the implications for you as you look across this of force posture, force employment, and other issues across theaters? What are the implications for the Marine Corps? And then we'll get to other people's perspectives as well. But, I mean, very interesting evolution of the security environment.
Yeah, thanks. And I guess I'll see if I can start big and then kind of end up small at the operational level. But the way I look at it now, 2 or 3 years ago, we did not talk about this cooperation, this collusion. We kind of said, we are the allies and partners force. We've got paper to prove it. Over years post-World War II, and kind of didn't recognize, or it wasn't apparent, that there were burgeoning relationships building that were just described. So I think we have to admit to it, discuss it, and analyze it, and not underemphasize what's going on. In particular, people parts and projectiles being given from the person who needs it, the country that needs it, from one who can supply it. That sounds a lot like an alliance sort of thing to me. So while it may not be a formalized agreement, it is happening, and I believe it will continue to happen. So bring it down a level. We're arranged around the world and have been in a COCOM arrangement that doesn't deny that reality, but is not lined up specifically to it. So that would be something going forward that we could look at through the UCP. And rely on maybe a more formal relationship, more formal exchanges between the COCOMs, or an alignment, a different alignment. Getting lower, I think you have to immediately believe that if there is a fight in one geographic area, because of these relationships, it will immediately metastasize or have a geographic and geopolitical protraction. It can't be avoided. So, well, if you want to have a short, sharp one in 100 miles straight, what we're seeing demonstrated is that will immediately have impact globally. And you've got to structure your force, depending on how serious you are about being a global force, to provide for those eventualities. So now at the operational level for the Marine Corps, we have got to be within striking distance of several different places at the time, and I do that with my shipmate, Jim Kilby here, and have the capabilities to hedge against those eventualities that we think will happen. Well, it wasn't meant to happen in the Bab el-Mandeb. It was meant to happen in some other geographic area. We've got to have an answer for these other eventualities around the world. Due once again, I think, to the cooperation and the alliance-like relationships that we see in action right now.
So from an Army perspective, General Mingus, how do you see things either differently or similarly? And you can disagree, by the way, with the Marine Corps. That's okay here.
Never. Jim Kilby, yes, but never Mo. Never Mo. So the relationships are not new. The level of cooperation is new. The sharing of technology is new and concerning, and we have to watch that. When you look at what Iran has given to Russia now is mass producing UAVs and one-man attack drones at a rate that we have not seen in a long time. So this sharing of technology, we have to be very concerned about that. But we fight as a joint force. We never fight alone. And the joint force, the United States joint force, is a pretty formidable force. Most lethal fighting machine on the face of the planet, and we ought to be expected, our country ought to expect us to be able to do more than one thing at one time. Inside the land force, we are, like the rest of us, we are optimizing for the Indo-PACOM scenario, but we know that there's the world you want to live in, and then there's the world you really live in, and we have to be prepared for those too.
So I wonder, going to the Navy, Admiral Kilby, you could certainly weigh in on this, but I do want to shift a little bit. Coming from the Indo-Pacific recently, one of the things that was interesting in flying a P-8 through the region is the amount of red in the area of the South China Sea, East China Sea, Taiwan Strait. The Chinese certainly have mass and scale in that area. One of the issues that we discussed this morning was on the issue of offsets. U.S. at various points with the Soviets during the Cold War looked at ways to offset some Soviet advantages in numbers, in some cases in Europe, both of the 50s with Eisenhower and then the 70s and 80s with Carter and Reagan. So what do you, as you look at the PLA Navy and their actions and their industrial-based mobilization, where does the U.S. have advantages? How do we keep those advantages over time?
Well, great question, Seth. I do want to comment, though, on what Mo and Jim said. We need to view this as a global problem all the time. And the Navy is this year will do its for its third time a thing called large-scale exercise. Happens in August, where we have the three four-star fleet commanders working to solve a problem and understand what happens here could have an impact on me, and coordinating through their combatant commands. So to me, that's an acknowledgement that this is the place we're in. There's also a bit of a transparency between UCP lines to Mo's point, where we need to be able to do handoffs and retain custody of assets, particularly submarine assets. So to me, that is being actively worked. To your specific question about what can we do from a mass perspective, one of our focus areas, we've got 5. One is long-range fires, counter-5 CSRT or counter-targeting, terminal defense, protecting our ships, contested logistics, and the 5th one is called non-traditional sea denial. So that's using unmanned assets in a way that presents a dilemma for the adversary. And last week, I was out with Admiral Paparo and Admiral Kaler as we were looking at some of these things and the control of them and how we would mask them. So I'll leave it at that, but that can apply to any theater. Just like I would say the force design concept for the Marine Corps could apply to any theater, and we shouldn't, buttonhole the Marine Corps to this specific problem, though it's certainly got a focus area of them. To me, that's extensible anywhere. So is this capability. So geography matters. I get a little vexed when people say, hey, can you take what they're doing in the Black Sea and apply it to the Pacific? Well, it's a different scope and scale, but I think in some cases it could apply. So using those things in a manner where we can create dilemmas for our adversary is what we're pursuing.
So on this particular topic, General Ployce, how's the Air Force thinking about this, and including in reaction to PLA, Air Force, and Rocket Force activity? How are you thinking about it, and how are you thinking about it in a joint perspective?
I think the biggest change over what we've done in the Middle East for really the last 25 years from an Air Force perspective, working with our joint partners on the ground, was right now you favor agility, you favor speed, you favor tempo, and you favor flexibility. So in other words, if China is the pacing threat, you have to be able to do that, but you can't just buy kit that solves that dilemma. There's another fight that's going to happen someplace else on the globe, and we don't get to pick where that is. And so what we've come at, much like the Marine Corps has, we've come at a new force design. It's called One Force Design for the Air Force. And what we've done is we've looked at it from kind of 3 different mission areas. And the first mission area is based on usually right after conflict starts, and we are in a contested environment, both on the ground and in the air. And I say that from an air perspective, that when I talk about a ground threat, that's my ability to land airplanes, refuel them, reload them, and launch them again. And that is a contested environment. You also have the air threat, which is just air superiority 101. So we've looked at that first mission area and looked specifically at how we can use the flexibility, agility that we need by providing mass, by providing quick opportunities to lower the threat, both ground and air. And we're also looking at things that are very hard to detect. And that's kind of our first mission area. Our second mission area is, once I've gotten the threat to come down, the ground threat and the air threat, I can now bring in more of the platforms that have range and they have speed and ability to penetrate. And then the third area is really what you would consider kind of our traditional forces. And that's the mass that we can bring, and that is what is going to help provide that cover for the joint force from an air superiority standpoint. That's really kind of where we're focusing our efforts.
So have your views, planning on agile combat employment, or ACE, evolved over time as the capabilities of adversaries have evolved?
Yeah, I think ACE, Agile Combat Employment, I was around when we first came up with the idea of it, and we've evolved quite a bit because we've done lots and lots of exercises. As Admiral Kilby said, we also are doing service-wide exercise this summer. It's called RE4PAC. It's going to be held out in the Pacific, and it is all of the United States Air Force with some joint partners that are playing in it as well. And what we've found is every time we do it, we get better at it. And hopefully that is also not just we're getting better at it from a standpoint of reps and sets, but it's more importantly that we also understand some of the contested logistics requirements for it, as well as the command and control.